The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, and I knew it was trouble the moment I saw the HOA logo embossed on the envelope. I am Daniel Erikson, and I had spent the last 15 years building my life on 43 acres of prime hunting land just outside Prescott, Arizona. The property had been in my family for 3 generations, passed down from my grandfather who homesteaded it back in the 1950s. I never imagined some suburban homeowners association would try to take it from me. I tore open the envelope with fingers that suddenly felt cold despite the desert heat. The letter was typed on expensive letterhead, the kind that screamed money and lawyers. It informed me that the Copper Ridge Homeowners Association had filed a claim of eminent domain on my property. They planned to seize my land to build a community recreational center, complete with tennis courts, a swimming pool, and hiking trails. The letter gave me 30 days to vacate. I read it 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding something fundamental about property law. Eminent domain was supposed to be a government power, not something a glorified neighborhood watch could invoke. But there it was in black and white, signed by one Patricia Mendleton, HOA president, and countersigned by their legal team at Morrison & Associates. My phone was in my hand before I finished reading. I called my brother Marcus, who worked in the state land office, but his secretary said he was in meetings all afternoon. I left a message asking him to call me back as soon as possible. Then, I grabbed my truck keys and drove the 12 miles into Prescott proper to find a lawyer. The first attorney I consulted, a guy named Richard Bowman, who advertised on park benches, took one look at the letter and whistled low. "This is aggressive," he said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "HOAs have been getting bolder lately, but I've never seen one try to claim eminent domain. That is constitutionally questionable at best." "Can they actually do this?" I asked, leaning forward in the chair that smelled faintly of old coffee and desperation. "Technically, no. Eminent domain is a power reserved for government entities. But if the HOA has somehow partnered with the county or incorporated themselves as some kind of special district, they might have found a loophole." He tapped the letter with his pen. "This would require serious legal firepower to fight. We are talking $50,000 minimum in legal fees, maybe more if it goes to court." I felt my stomach drop. I had savings, but not that kind of money. The hunting land generated some income from lease agreements with other hunters during season, but it was not a cash cow. "What happens if I just ignore them?" "They will file for a court order. If a judge grants it, you will be forcibly removed and they will take possession of the property. You would get compensation, but it would be fair market value as determined by their appraiser, which I guarantee will be lower than what the land is actually worth." I left his office feeling like I'd been sucker punched. The drive back to my property took me past the Copper Ridge development, a sprawling maze of identical beige houses with terracotta roofs. The neighborhood had sprung up about 7 years ago, transforming what used to be open desert into a planned community for Phoenix transplants looking for small-town living. I had watched it grow with mild curiosity, never imagining it would become my problem. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. It was Marcus. "Danny, what is going on? Your message sounded urgent." I explained the situation, reading him portions of the letter. There was a long silence on the other end. "That is impossible," Marcus finally said. His voice had taken on the careful, measured tone he used when he was thinking through complex regulations. "HOAs do not have eminent domain authority in Arizona, period. Someone is either badly misinformed or deliberately trying to scam you. The letter looks legitimate. They have lawyers and everything. I do not care if they have the Supreme Court backing them up. Arizona revised statutes are clear. Only governmental entities can exercise eminent domain. An HOA is a private organization." I heard papers rustling on his end. "Look, I'm about to head into another meeting, but email me a copy of that letter. I want to run this past some people in the legal department here. This smells wrong." I scanned the letter and sent it to him, then spent the rest of the evening researching Arizona eminent domain law on my laptop. Everything I read confirmed what Marcus had said. Private organizations could not seize property through eminent domain. So either the Copper Ridge HOA had somehow achieved governmental status, or they were running an elaborate bluff hoping I would not know my rights. The next morning, I decided to go straight to the source. I drove to the Copper Ridge Community Center, a Pueblo-style building that served as the HOA headquarters. Inside, the air conditioning was cranked so high I could see my breath. A young receptionist with a blonde ponytail looked up from her computer. "I need to speak with Patricia Mendleton," I said, keeping my voice level. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I think she will want to see me. I am Daniel Erikson." Recognition flickered across her face. "Oh, let me see if she's available." She disappeared through a door marked Administration and returned a moment later with a woman who could only be described as the physical embodiment of an HOA president. Patricia Mendleton was in her early 50s, with severely highlighted hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my truck payment and carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of telling people what to do. "Mr. Erikson," she said, extending a hand with perfectly manicured nails. "I was wondering when you would stop by. Please come to my office." Her office was decorated in Southwest chic, all turquoise accents and Georgia O'Keeffe prints. She settled behind a massive desk and folded her hands, looking at me with what I am sure she thought was a sympathetic expression. I know this must be difficult for you," she began. "Change always is, but I want you to understand that what we are doing benefits the entire community. Your property is essential for our expansion plans." "You cannot claim eminent domain," I said flatly. "You are not a government entity." Her smile never wavered. "Actually, Mr. Erikson, we can. Copper Ridge is registered as a special improvement district under Arizona law. That designation grants us certain governmental powers, including the ability to acquire land for public use through eminent domain proceedings." I felt a chill run down my spine. If what she was saying was true, I was in serious trouble. "I want to see the documentation proving that." "Of course." She pulled a folder from her desk and slid it across to me. "This is all public record. We filed the incorporation papers 3 years ago with the county. It was approved by the Board of Supervisors." I flipped through the documents. They looked official enough, stamped and signed by various county officials. There were pages of legal jargon about service districts and special taxation authority. My head spun trying to make sense of it all. "Even if you have this authority," I said slowly, "eminent domain requires that you prove the taking is for legitimate public use and that you have no other alternatives. My land is not even adjacent to your development." "It is 3 miles away," Patricia agreed. "But it is the only suitable location for our planned recreational facility. We need space for parking, sports fields, and nature trails. Your property has the topography and acreage we require." She leaned forward, her expression hardening slightly. "Look, Mr. Erikson, we are prepared to offer you fair market value plus 10%. That is more than generous. You could take that money and buy land somewhere else, somewhere more suitable for your needs." "My needs are perfectly suited to the land I have. It has been in my family for 70 years. Sentimental value does not supersede the community's needs. We have over 2,000 residents in Copper Ridge, and that number is growing. They deserve quality amenities." She stood, signaling the meeting was over. "You have 30 days, Mr. Erikson. I suggest you use that time to consult with a real estate agent rather than wasting money on lawyers. This is happening whether you like it or not." I left the HOA office feeling angrier than I had been in years. The documents she had shown me looked legitimate, but something about the whole situation felt wrong. I called Marcus again from my truck. "I need you to check something," I said when he answered. "Patricia Mendleton claims Copper Ridge HOA is registered as a special improvement district. She showed me paperwork saying the county approved it 3 years ago." "Hold on," I heard keyboard clicking. "What is the exact name of the district?" "Copper Ridge Community Special Improvement District." More clicking. Then Marcus made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a grunt. "Danny, there is no such district registered with the State Land Department, and I am looking at the county records right now. There is a Copper Ridge Homeowners Association, but it is registered as a standard nonprofit corporation, no special governmental status." My heart started pounding. "Are you absolutely certain?" 100%. I am literally looking at their corporate filing right now. They are a private HOA, nothing more." His voice took on an edge. "Which means they just committed fraud by showing you forged government documents. That is a felony." What do I do? First, do not sign anything they give you. Second, I'm going to make some calls. If they are forging county documents, that is serious. The Attorney General's office needs to know about this. He paused. Can you get me copies of what she showed you? She did not let me keep them. Just showed them to me in her office. That is convenient. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to contact the County Board of Supervisors directly. If someone forged their signatures on incorporation documents, they are going to be very interested. In the meantime, sit tight and do not engage with the HOA further. I spent the next 2 days in a state of anxious suspension, working on routine maintenance around the property but unable to focus. My hunting land was my sanctuary, the place where I went to escape the stress of my job as an HVAC technician. I had a small cabin on the property, solar panels for power, and a well that tapped into the aquifer. It was not fancy, but it was mine. The thought of losing it to some suburban HOA's land grab made my blood boil. On Thursday afternoon, Marcus called with an update. Okay, this just got very interesting. I spoke with the county supervisor who supposedly signed those incorporation documents. She has no record of ever seeing them. Her signature was forged. So what happens now? The county is opening an investigation. They are treating this as fraud and forgery, possibly conspiracy. But here is where it gets complicated. The HOA lawyers might claim it was an administrative error, that they genuinely believed they had the proper authority. It becomes a he said, she said situation unless we can prove intentional fraud. Patricia Mendleton knew exactly what she was doing. She was way too confident. Probably, but proving criminal intent is hard. The county investigation will take weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, that 30-day deadline is still ticking. I could hear the frustration in his voice. I wish I could do more right now, but my hands are tied by protocol. I cannot officially intervene in an HOA dispute, even though I know they are wrong. I understand. Thanks for looking into it. Wait, there is one more thing. Tomorrow I have a meeting with the state land commissioner. I'm going to brief him on this situation. If an HOA is falsely claiming governmental authority, that is something his office needs to address from a policy standpoint. The state land commissioner. I had forgotten that Marcus had been working on some special project that gave him direct access to the commissioner's office. You think he will care about one HOA? If they are doing this to you, they might be doing it to others. This could be a pattern. Either way, it is worth flagging. Friday morning, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I drove back into Prescott and went to the county recorder's office. The clerk, a tired-looking woman named Susan, helped me pull up all the public records associated with Copper Ridge HOA. I spent 3 hours going through incorporation documents, bylaws, meeting minutes, and financial statements. What I found was illuminating. The HOA had been in financial trouble for the past 2 years. They had taken out loans to build their current community center and were struggling to make payments. Their reserve fund was nearly depleted. Several internal memos mentioned the need to expand their tax base by bringing in new properties. That was when I understood their scheme. They were not just trying to steal my land for a recreational center. They wanted to forcibly annex my property into their HOA district, which would make me subject to their fees and special assessments. With 43 acres, I would be paying thousands of dollars annually into their coffers. And once they had the precedent, they could do it to other neighboring properties, effectively funding their financial shortfall through forced expansion. I photographed everything I could with my phone and emailed it to Marcus. Then, I went to the sheriff's office and filed a formal complaint about the forged documents. The deputy who took my statement seemed skeptical at first, but when I showed him the evidence Marcus had compiled, his attitude changed. "This is really above my pay grade," he admitted, "but I will file the report and make sure it gets to the fraud division. You should probably also contact a civil attorney about getting a restraining order to prevent them from taking any action against your property." I took his advice and retained a lawyer named Sarah Preston who specialized in property rights cases. She was expensive, but she took one look at my evidence and agreed to work on a contingency basis if I would let her use the case to set precedent about HOA overreach. "This is exactly the kind of abuse I've been warning about," she said, her eyes bright with professional excitement. HOAs have been granted too much power in Arizona, and some of them are starting to act like mini-governments. We need to push back hard. She filed for an emergency injunction to stop any eminent domain proceedings, and we got a court date set for the following Wednesday. In the meantime, the 30-day deadline was approaching fast. On Monday, I received another certified letter from the HOA. This one was even more aggressive, threatening legal action if I did not sign the property transfer agreement by Friday. They had included a settlement offer, $60,000 for my land, which was worth at least $300,000 on the open market. I called Sarah immediately. They are doubling down. Good. The more aggressive they get, the better our case. Do not respond to them at all. Let them make the next move. Tuesday evening, Marcus called with news. The state land commissioner wants to meet with you. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, Phoenix office. Can you make it? Yeah, of course. But why does he want to meet me? I told him about your case. He is really concerned about the implications. If HOAs are forging government documents to claim eminent domain authority, that is a statewide problem. Marcus paused. Danny, I should probably tell you something. The commissioner is taking this personally because he used to own hunting land that got annexed by a municipality against his will. He lost that fight and had to sell. He does not want to see it happen to anyone else. The drive to Phoenix took 2.5 hours through the desert landscape I loved. The state land department office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. I went through security and was escorted to the 10th floor, where Marcus met me in the lobby. You ready for this? He asked. I guess. What should I expect? Just tell him everything, same as you told me. He is good people, Danny. Really cares about protecting property rights. We were shown into a corner office with a view of the Phoenix skyline. Behind the desk sat a man in his early 60s with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent time outdoors. He stood and extended his hand. Mr. Erikson, I am Thomas Crawford, State Land Commissioner. Your brother has told me about your situation, and I wanted to hear the details directly from you. I spent the next 40 minutes walking him through everything. The initial letter, my meeting with Patricia Mendleton, the forged documents, the HOA's financial troubles, and their apparent scheme to annex surrounding properties. Thomas listened intently, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. This is worse than I thought. The problem's that Arizona law gives HOAs broad authority over their member properties, but nothing in statute explicitly prohibits them from claiming powers they do not have. If a homeowner does not know their rights, they might just comply. So I am not the first person they have tried this on, I said. I do not know about Copper Ridge specifically, but my office has received complaints about similar tactics from other HOAs around the state. Usually it is more subtle, forcing sales through excessive fines or using deed restrictions to limit property use until owners give up and sell. But falsely claiming eminent domain authority crosses a line. He leaned forward. Here is what I can do officially. I can issue a public advisory clarifying that private HOAs do not have eminent domain authority in Arizona. That will put every HOA in the state on notice that this tactic is illegal. What about Copper Ridge specifically? Can you shut them down? That requires law enforcement and the courts, but I can refer this case to the Attorney General's Office for Criminal Investigation. Forgery of government documents is a serious crime. If we can prove Patricia Mendleton and her board knowingly used fake documents to intimidate you, they will face charges. He looked at Marcus, then back at me. Your brother has also suggested something that I think is worth pursuing. We could fast-track a legislative proposal to explicitly criminalize false claims of governmental authority by private organizations. Use your case as the impetus for reform. I just want to keep my land, I said. And you will. But we can also use this to protect other property owners across the state. Thomas stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. I spent 20 years building up a cattle ranch in Cochise County. Had a small town annex my property through some legal maneuvering I did not understand at the time. They said they needed the tax revenue. I fought it for 3 years and lost everything. Legal fees bankrupted me. He turned back to face me. I do not want that to happen to you or anyone else. So I'm going to throw the full weight of this office behind your case. I felt a wave of relief so intense it was almost dizzying. Thank you. I did not know where else to turn. That is exactly the problem. Most people do not know their rights, and organizations like Copper Ridge HOA exploit that ignorance. He returned to his desk and picked up his phone. Marcus, can you stay and work on the advisory with my legal team? Mr. Erikson, I am going to have my assistant schedule a press conference for later this week. I want you there to tell your story publicly. The more sunlight we shine on this, the harder it will be for the HOA to continue their intimidation campaign. The press conference was scheduled for Friday morning, the same day as the HOA's deadline. Sarah Preston thought the timing was perfect. We will make it impossible for them to take any action without looking like criminals, she said. Wednesday's court hearing for the injunction was almost anticlimactic. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Margaret Riley, took about 5 minutes to review our evidence before ruling in my favor. I am issuing a temporary restraining order preventing Copper Ridge HOA from taking any action related to the property in question until this matter can be fully litigated. Furthermore, I am ordering the HOA to show cause why they should not be held in contempt for filing false legal claims. Patricia Mendleton and her lawyer were in the courtroom, and I watched the color drain from her face. Her attorney, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit, immediately requested a recess to consult with his client. Judge Riley granted them 15 minutes. When they returned, the lawyer's whole demeanor had changed. Your Honor, after reviewing the matter with my client, we believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the HOA's authority. We are prepared to withdraw the eminent domain claim and issue a formal apology to Mr. Erikson. A misunderstanding, Judge Riley repeated, her voice dripping with skepticism. Counselor, your client presented forged government documents to Mr. Erikson. That goes somewhat beyond a misunderstanding. We are still investigating how those documents came to be in the HOA's possession. It is possible they were provided by a third party who misrepresented their authenticity. I leaned over to Sarah. He is trying to set up a fall guy, I whispered. She nodded. Let him. The AG's investigation will find the truth. Judge Riley was not buying it either. I'm going to make my restraining order permanent. Copper Ridge HOA is hereby prohibited from making any claims of eminent domain authority now or in the future, as they demonstrably lack such authority under Arizona law. I'm also referring this matter to the State Attorney General for criminal investigation. This court is adjourned. As we filed out of the courtroom, Patricia Mendleton tried to approach me. Mr. Erikson, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. I have nothing to say to you, I replied, keeping my voice flat. Talk to my lawyer. You are making a mistake. We could have worked together. Now you have made an enemy of the entire Copper Ridge community. Pretty sure you made an enemy of me first when you tried to steal my land with fake documents. Her face flushed red. How dare you? We have every right to pursue expansion. Our community deserves amenities, and your selfish desire to keep that land for your personal use is standing in the way of progress. Your financial mismanagement is not my problem, I said, and threatening me is not going to change anything. Sarah stepped between us. Mrs. Mendleton, any further contact with my client will be considered harassment and added to our civil lawsuit. I suggest you leave now. Patricia stormed off, her heels clicking angrily on the marble floor. Her lawyer lingered for a moment, looking tired. Off the record? She did this without board approval. When the other HOA members find out the liability she has exposed them to, she will be out. That's her problem, Sarah said. Now it is on the record. The press conference on Friday was held at the State Land Department building. Thomas Crawford had invited media from across Arizona, and I was surprised by the turnout. Every major news station in Phoenix had sent a crew, plus reporters from newspapers and online outlets. Thomas opened with a statement about the importance of property rights and the concerning trend of HOA overreach. Then he introduced me. I had never been comfortable with public speaking, but I told my story as clearly as I could. The reporters ate it up, especially when I showed copies of the forged documents. Mr. Erikson, how did you know the documents were fake? One reporter asked. My brother works for the State Land Department. He checked with the county officials who supposedly signed them. They had no record of it. What would you say to other property owners who might be facing similar situations? Know your rights. Do not let anyone intimidate you into giving up your property. And if something seems wrong, get a second opinion from someone who understands the law. After the press conference, the story exploded. It was picked up by national news outlets as an example of HOA abuse. My phone rang constantly with interview requests. Sarah advised me to be selective, focusing on outlets that would help shape the narrative in our favor. The Copper Ridge HOA board held an emergency meeting that weekend. According to Marcus, who had sources in the community, it was chaotic. Several board members claimed they knew nothing about Patricia's eminent domain scheme. Financial records showed she had spent nearly $20,000 in HOA funds on the fake documents and legal fees without board authorization. By Monday, Patricia Mendleton had resigned as HOA president. The board issued a public statement apologizing to me and claiming Patricia had acted independently. They offered to cover my legal fees as a gesture of goodwill. Do not accept, Sarah advised. We are going after a lot more than legal fees. They are liable for emotional distress, harassment, and attempted fraud. I am thinking we can get a settlement in the mid-six figures. But I was not interested in a settlement. I wanted accountability. File the lawsuit. Make them go to trial. That could take years. I do not care. They tried to steal my land. Other people need to see there are real consequences for that. The criminal investigation moved faster than I expected. The Attorney General's office assigned a prosecutor named David Chen, who was apparently known for going after white-collar criminals. He subpoenaed all of Copper Ridge HOA's records and found a trail of emails between Patricia Mendleton and a graphic designer she had hired to create the fake incorporation documents. The designer cooperated immediately, providing evidence that Patricia had specifically requested documents that looked like official county records. She had paid him $5,000 in cash to keep it off the books. The designer had assumed it was for some kind of presentation or mock-up, but the emails made clear Patricia intended to use them to intimidate property owners. David Chen called me in September. We are moving forward with charges. Patricia Mendleton will be indicted on 3 counts of forgery, 2 counts of fraud, and 1 count of attempted extortion. We are also charging the HOA's lawyer with conspiracy, as evidence suggests he knew the documents were fake. What kind of sentence are we talking about? If convicted on all counts, she is looking at 4 to 10 years. The lawyer might cut a deal to testify against her, which would reduce his exposure. He paused. I want you to know, this case is important beyond just your situation. We have found evidence that at least 6 other property owners in the Prescott area received similar letters from Copper Ridge HOA over the past 2 years. Most of them complied without realizing they did not have to. My stomach turned. They gave up their property or paid significant settlements to avoid the hassle. We are reaching out to those individuals now to see if they want to pursue civil claims. Your willingness to fight back may have saved a lot of people. The trial was scheduled for March of the following year. In the meantime, my life slowly returned to normal. I spent the fall hunting season on my land, grateful every day that I still had it. Marcus visited often, and we talked about starting a foundation to help property owners fight HOA abuse. Thomas Crawford made good on his promise to push for legislative reform. He worked with state legislators to draft a bill explicitly prohibiting private organizations from claiming governmental powers. The bill also created criminal penalties for HOA board members who knowingly violated property owners' rights. It was named the Property Owners Protection Act, though informally it became known as the Erikson Law. The bill passed with bipartisan support and was signed by the governor in January. Thomas called me to share the news. Your case made this possible. Every property owner in Arizona owes you a debt of gratitude. I just did not want to lose my land, I said, but I'm glad something good came out of it. Patricia Mendleton's trial began on a cold March morning. Sarah and I attended every day, sitting in the gallery watching the prosecution dismantle her defense. Her lawyer tried to argue that she had genuinely believed the HOA had eminent domain authority, but the emails with the graphic designer destroyed that claim. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. At sentencing, the judge was harsh. "Mrs. Mendleton, you abused a position of trust to enrich your organization at the expense of your neighbors. You created fake government documents and used them to intimidate law-abiding citizens. This court takes such violations extremely seriously. I am sentencing you to 6 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay restitution to all affected property owners in an amount to be determined." I watched as she was led away in handcuffs, and I felt no satisfaction, just relief that it was over. The civil lawsuit against Copper Ridge HOA settled 2 months later. They agreed to pay me $400,000, which more than covered my legal fees and compensated me for the year of stress and uncertainty. More importantly, they agreed to dissolve their board and restructure under new leadership with strict oversight provisions. I used some of the settlement money to upgrade my property. I built a proper guest cabin so Marcus could visit more comfortably. I improved the solar array and dug a second well. The rest I invested, figuring I would use it to help other people facing similar situations. True to my word, Marcus and I established the Arizona Property Rights Defense Fund. We partnered with several civil liberties organizations to provide legal assistance to homeowners dealing with HOA abuse. Within the first year, we helped over 40 families successfully fight back against unreasonable HOA demands. The media attention from my case had a ripple effect across the country. Other states began examining their HOA laws, and several followed Arizona's lead in passing similar protective legislation. HOA reform became a legitimate political issue, with candidates in local elections running on platforms of curbing HOA power. I never sought out the spotlight, but I did agree to speak at property rights conferences and legislative hearings when asked. My message was always the same: know your rights, do not be intimidated, and do not be afraid to fight back against institutional bullying. 2 years after the initial letter arrived, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset over my 43 acres when Marcus drove up. He had a bottle of bourbon and a grin on his face. "What are we celebrating?" I asked as he climbed the steps. "Thomas Crawford just announced his retirement. He is leaving at the end of the year." Marcus poured 2 glasses and handed me one. "He told me privately that your case was the highlight of his career, said it reminded him why he got into public service in the first place." We clinked glasses and drank. The bourbon burned pleasantly on the way down. "You know, I have been thinking," Marcus said. "What if I ran for land commissioner when Thomas steps down? I have got the experience, and I think I could continue the work he started on HOA reform." "You would be great at it," I said honestly. "You already helped save my land. Imagine what you could do from that office. I will need your help. Campaign appearances, fundraising, the whole deal. Whatever you need." Marcus did run for land commissioner, and his campaign centered on property rights protection and accountable governance. My story was featured prominently in his campaign materials. He won the election with 62% of the vote. On his first day in office, he invited me to the swearing-in ceremony in Phoenix. Standing in that same office where Thomas Crawford had first listened to my story, I felt the weight of how much had changed. One abusive HOA's overreach had sparked statewide reform and given my brother a platform to protect property owners across Arizona. After the ceremony, Marcus and I stood on the office balcony looking out at the sprawling city. "None of this would have happened if you had just rolled over and let them take your land," he said. "I had good help. If you had not been there to verify those documents were fake, I might have believed them. That's what family is for." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Speaking of which, when are you going to find someone to share that land with? All those acres and just you rattling around?" I laughed. "Maybe someday. Right now, I am pretty happy with how things are." And I was. My hunting land remained mine, a haven of peace in an increasingly complicated world. I'd helped change laws that would protect thousands of other property owners. I'd discovered that ordinary people could fight back against institutional abuse and win. And the Copper Ridge development still existed, of course. Under new management, they had become a more reasonable organization. They built their recreational center on a different piece of land, purchased legitimately through willing sellers. Some of the residents reached out to apologize for what Patricia Mendleton had done in their name. I accepted their apologies. I ran into one of those residents, a guy named Tom, at a hardware store in Prescott a few months after Marcus's swearing in. He recognized me from the news coverage. "B, I just want you to know, most of us had no idea what Patricia was doing," he said. "When it all came out, we were horrified. That is not what our community is about." "I appreciate you saying that," I replied. "I never blamed the residents, just the people in charge who abused their power. We have got a completely new board now, very transparent, very focused on serving the community rather than expanding it. If you are ever interested in joining us for any community events, you would be welcome." "Thanks, but I prefer my space." I smiled to take any sting out of the words. "Nothing personal." "I get it. After what we put you through, I would not want anything to do with us either." He extended his hand. "But for what it is worth, I am glad you fought back. You taught a lot of us to pay more attention to what our HOA board is doing." That was perhaps the most important outcome of the whole ordeal. People were paying attention now. HOA boards across Arizona knew they were being watched and that there were real consequences for overstepping their authority. The balance of power had shifted, even if just a little, back toward individual property owners. I still get requests for interviews occasionally, usually when there's a new HOA abuse story making headlines somewhere in the country. I generally decline unless I think the platform will help educate people about their rights. Fame was never the goal. Keeping my land was. On quiet evenings, I sit on my porch and listen to the sounds of the desert, coyotes calling in the distance, the wind rustling through the scrub oak, the occasional owl hunting in the darkness. This land has been in my family for 3 generations, and if I have my way, it will be here for 3 more. The hunting cabin my grandfather built still stands, weathered but solid. I have maintained it carefully, replacing boards when needed but keeping the original character. Sometimes I sleep there instead of my main house just to feel connected to the history. My grandfather homesteaded this land when Arizona was still wild, when the idea of a suburban HOA trying to claim it would have been laughable. Times change, but some principles remain constant. Property rights matter, standing up to bullies matters, and having family who will back you up when things get tough matters most of all. Marcus and I made it a tradition to spend opening day of hunting season together on the land. We wake before dawn, make coffee over a camp stove, and head out to our respective stands as the sun rises. We do not always get deer, but that's not really the point. It is about being out there, connected to the land and to each other. Last season, as we were packing up camp, Marcus said something that stuck with me. "You know what I love about this place? It is proof that you can fight City Hall and win. Or in your case, fight the HOA and win." "With a little help from my brother who happened to work in the land office," I pointed out. "Access matters," he agreed, "but you still had to be willing to fight. A lot of people would have just taken their $60,000 and walked away." "That was never an option. This land is worth more than money." He nodded, understanding completely. We had both grown up coming here with our grandfather, learning to track deer and read the land. Those memories were woven into every acre. No dollar amount could compensate for that. The Property Rights Defense Fund continues to grow. We have helped hundreds of families now, and our success rate is over 90%. Most cases settle once the HOAs realize we are serious about fighting back. A few have gone to trial, and we have won every time. The precedent from my case made it much easier to challenge HOA overreach. We expanded the fund to offer educational seminars for property owners. We teach them how to read their HOA covenants, what rights they have under Arizona law, and when to push back against unreasonable demands. Knowledge is power, especially when dealing with organizations that count on your ignorance. I also work with a coalition trying to reform HOA law at the federal level. It is slow going because HOAs are powerful lobbying forces, but we are making progress. Several members of Congress have introduced bills to limit HOA authority and provide federal protections for property owners. None have passed yet, but the conversation is happening. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had not had Marcus to help me, if I had not known to question the HOA's claims. I probably would have hired that first lawyer, Richard Bowman, and tried to fight with inadequate resources. Or maybe I would have just given up and taken their lowball offer, believing I had no choice. That is what keeps me involved in the advocacy work. For every person like me who has connections and resources, there are dozens who do not. They are vulnerable to exactly the kind of predatory behavior Copper Ridge tried. If my story can help protect even a few of them, the whole terrible experience will have been worth it. Patricia Mendleton is serving her sentence at the Arizona State Prison Complex in Perryville. I heard through the legal grapevine that she maintains her innocence, claiming she was just doing what was best for her community. Some people never accept responsibility for their actions. The HOA's lawyer, James Morrison, took a plea deal. He lost his license to practice law and served 18 months in minimum security. He cooperated fully with investigators, helping them understand how the scheme was supposed to work. Apparently, Patricia had planned to use the fake eminent domain claim on multiple properties, creating a pattern of forced annexations that would have doubled Copper Ridge's size. If she had succeeded, she would have been hailed as a visionary HOA president. Instead, she is a cautionary tale about what happens when neighborhood association power goes unchecked. The 6 other property owners who had been targeted by Copper Ridge all filed civil suits. The HOA settled with each of them for undisclosed amounts. I know at least 2 of them joined our Property Rights Defense Fund as donors, wanting to help prevent others from going through what they experienced. One of them, an elderly woman named Dorothy, who had sold her property for a fraction of its value under pressure from Patricia's threats, used her settlement to buy new land. She invited me to visit once, and I was glad to see she had found a place even nicer than what she had lost. But she told me the experience had changed her, made her less trusting of authority figures and institutions. That is perhaps the hidden cost of HOA abuse. It erodes social trust and turns neighbors against each other. Communities should be built on cooperation and mutual respect, not coercion and intimidation. When HOAs forget that fundamental principle, they become tools of oppression rather than community enhancement. I think about that a lot as I work on reform efforts. The goal is not to eliminate HOAs, but to restore balance. They can serve legitimate purposes, maintaining common areas and enforcing reasonable standards. But they need strict oversight and accountability, especially when it comes to finances and enforcement powers. The legislation Marcus helped push through in Arizona became a model for other states. It included provisions requiring HOAs to maintain transparent financial records, limiting their ability to foreclose on properties over unpaid fees, and creating an ombudsman office to investigate complaints. It was not perfect, but it was a significant improvement over the previous system. Marcus proved to be an excellent land commissioner. He took Thomas Crawford's vision and expanded it, creating programs to help small landowners navigate complex regulations and protect their properties from governmental and quasi-governmental overreach. He became a national voice on property rights issues, testifying before Congress and working with advocacy groups across the country. I am proud of what he has accomplished and proud that my case helped give him the platform to do it. But mostly, I'm just glad I still have my land. Last week, I took my nephew out for his first hunting trip. He is 12 now, old enough to handle a rifle safely, and patient enough to sit in a stand for hours waiting for deer. We did not get anything, but watching his face light up at every small movement in the brush reminded me why this land matters so much. It is not just about preserving the past. It is about passing something forward, giving the next generation a connection to the natural world and to family history. My grandfather passed this land to my father, who passed it to me. Someday, I will pass it to my nephew or another family member. That chain of stewardship matters more than any recreational center or housing development ever could. As I write this, sitting in the cabin with the lantern casting shadows on the log walls, I can hear the night sounds of the desert outside. This land has weathered droughts and floods, fires and freezes. It survived being homesteaded in the 1950s and being targeted by an abusive HOA in the 2020s. It will survive whatever comes next because there are people willing to fight for it. That's the real lesson of my story. Your home, your land, your property rights are worth fighting for. Do not let anyone intimidate you into giving them up. Know your rights, get good help, and do not back down when you are in the right. And if you are lucky enough to have a brother who happens to be the land commissioner, that does not hurt either. The fire is burning low now, and dawn will come early. Tomorrow I will wake up on my 43 acres of hunting land, the same land my grandfather homesteaded 70 years ago, the same land an HOA tried to steal with fake documents and threats. I will make coffee and watch the sun rise over the mountains, and I will be grateful for every single acre. Because this land is not just property. It is not just an investment or an asset. It is home in the deepest sense of the word, and no HOA board or fake government document is ever going to take that away from me again.